Okay. We are live. Hello, world. Hello to friends in the Ultimate Coach community. Ooh, look, the light's flashing behind me. That's exciting. Hello to y'all wherever you are tuning in from. Daniel Aaron here. And this quotation from Lao Tzu, let's see, can I remember it exactly right? Something like, when I let go of who I am, I get to become who I might be, something like that. The reason that comes to mind right now is because I am in a really fun, cool process, and I'm wondering if y'all have had this experience before, right? So some of you know what I mean when I refer to the document, personal truth and commitment portal. I call it the Supreme Self Manifesto. It's my the idea, which I got from Steve Hardison, of creating a written out document, set of declarations of who we choose to be. Now, although I've worked with declarations and affirmations and incantations for like 20 years, it was only last year when I learned about how Steve Hardison uses it that's going to drive me crazy, that flashing light. Hold on. Let's see if we can get that adjusted. We'll just turn it off. There we go. Okay, pardon me for that. It was only when I learned from Steve how he works with this idea of the document, is how he calls it, that like light bulbs clicked, even flashing ones clicked for me. I was like, wow. Right? And I've been a writer and an author for a long time. So this concept of being the author of one's own life, it's not a new concept. Though here's the thing, concepts don't necessarily get us that far. And part of why I'm here now is because I believe, and tell me if this is your experience, I'd love to hear from you, that a lot of people have the concept, know the idea of having a document, though have not created it or are not using it. And here's what I know. Going all the way back to when I first was learning about writing, one of my most important teachers, a woman named Natalie Goldberg, they called her Saint Goldberg because she was so encouraging to us young writers. And one of the things that she encouraged was having a messy, cheap notebook that you didn't feel badly about messing up, and just writing anything you want, and using, and here are a couple keys that are going to lead us into hopefully something that's of really good value for you in the idea of your document, manifesto, whatever you call it. She said, right, just scribble, this is what she called it, make a shitty first draft, right? A shitty first draft, because it takes the pressure off. And rather than, trying to get the thing just perfect, it allows the creativity to go. Because what happens, right? What happens when we try to get it perfect? What happens when we try and make it just right? Well, for most of us, it's paralysis, right? It's like, now I've got this perfectionistic view. And as soon as we start to put something, it becomes like, that's not right. I don't know. And we start criticizing ourselves and blocking ourselves before we get anywhere. So for the creative process, it's so important, so valuable to get this concept of separating out creation from editing. Both really valuable. Creation is what makes editing possible. In other words, if we don't create something, there's no editing. And in the case of this, what we're talking about, and just in case anyone's here that doesn't know what I'm talking about, live or by rebroadcast, the idea that Steve Hardison made so beautifully clear is that we all have the capacity to create a document, a manifesto, a set of phrases, most of which begin with I am, that clarify and intentionally create our being, who we are. Right now, of course, everybody has one already. It's just for most people, it's unconscious. We haven't thought about it. We haven't written it down. So this concept is do it intentionally. Be the intentional author of your being, of who you are. So in this case, going back to what Natalie Goldberg said, right? Make a shitty first draft. Because if we don't make a draft, we can't edit it. If we don't make a draft, we can't use it intentionally, as in reading it, reciting it, declaring it, making it alive. Right? That's what we get to do with this when we have it. So, as I'm working with some of my clients on this process right now, so well, what's going to make the most benefit? How's it going to help them most? Well, one, get it done. So, shitty first draft, right? Just get something down and do it in short order, right? Because then we can work with it. Then we can play with it. Now, here's what I'm discovering, because I love being a student. And part of why I've been a teacher, or played the role of teacher in my life over many years now, 29 years since I consciously stepped into that, is because it forces me to be a student, right? And when I used to lead professional trainings, I would say, right, who's the best teacher? What are the characteristics of a best teacher? Right? Well, one of them for sure is somebody who's super dedicated to, devoted to learning. So what that means for me, or part of what that means for me right now, is as I'm guiding some of my clients in this process, well, I'm saying, hey, you know what? This is a good time for me to go back to basics, go back to the fundamental, to go back to my own document. Again, manifesto is what I call it. And by the way, I call it Supreme Self Manifesto. And I think of it this way. One of the great teachers and guides of our time, Phil Stutz, Shrink to the Stars, he has a concept that he puts forward as Part X. And he says, Part X, everybody has and always will. Not sure. It's been my experience. I have it and I always will. What does it mean? Part X is that voice of limitation. You know, the voice that says, I can't, I'm not able. It can be laziness, doubt, hesitation, cloud. It's, argue for your limitations and they shall be yours. Part X is that arguing voice. And it could be said that our life in some way is the process of, do I listen to this one or list this one? So we got part X, it pulls us down, it weakens us in some way, that we've got what I call the supreme self, like who we are at our clearest, at our brightest, us without baggage, without worry, without fear, knowing that we will succeed, that we can create whatever we want, right? The part that's ruled by love, truth, right? Spirit. So to me, that's the supreme self. And what I know is it's possible to live in that. I don't know if it's possible to live in it all the time. It's not been my experience, not yet anyway. I'm still, aiming toward it, though certainly way more than I used to, and way more because of the use of this manifesto. So me right now in the process of working with others, helping them to create. So I say, this is a good time for me. I worked with it or solidified it, right? And I say it, meaning the manifesto, meaning the written set of statements, about 6 months ago. And of course, learned to know it by heart, which might be a little bit different than memorized it. Maybe words matter. Learned it by heart, meaning because it meant so much to me, right? It's so emotional and meaningful to me, this document of who I am and who I can be, in large part because that means how I can show up in the world for my daughter, for my friends, for my family, for my community, for my clients. Who I am is how I will serve them. So anyway, coming back on track, I am revising. Like, hey, this is a good time for me to go back and see, all right, what are the parts of my manifesto that I feel like I'm doing, like that I'm living? And what are the parts that I haven't really like made good traction with? And if so, why is that? Well, part of it for me, and again, I would love to hear your experience, is the wording. Is the wording such that I really feel it, that it moves me, that it brings me to that state? Of course, there's a component of how do I say it? How do I energize it? What do I see in the world when I think of those words, right? How I activate it and cultivate it. And for me, especially, I love words. The words themselves matter. So here I am in the process now of saying, okay, here's what I got. I love all those things, though some of them, they don't feel like, not that I necessarily have them 100%, but I don't know if I have to recite them every day. They feel like they are kind of part of me now. And there are other things I've realized in the last 6 months and lately, like, these are pieces of my life that are important, pieces of my character that I don't feel like I addressed in my manifesto. So, hey, this is a good time to add some things in, take some things out, right? I'm letting go of certain things. And what's an amazingly interesting process for me right now is seeing that just by working with this document, I feel like I'm in flux, like my vibration is in flux, like my identity is oscillating in some way. Like, and part of the way I work with it is over the course of several days. So I write, I sleep, I declare, I move through the day, I reflect, and at the end of the day, in the morning, I reflect again. That light's got a mind of its own, so it goes. I'm pretty sure I turned it off, but hey, clarion call, I don't know. Anyway, so I feel right now confused. I'm confused about who I am, and not in a bad way. It is uncomfortable at times, though it's not in a bad way, because one of the ways I think of confusion is the state that precedes a breakthrough, right? It's like more of a concern for me is when I think I got things nailed down and figured out. Confusion says to me, oh, I don't know, which means I can learn. Confusion also, I had a Gestalt therapy training many years ago, and one of the teachers defined confusion in that context as the presence of two or more feelings that appear to conflict. Huh, okay, interesting. So I feel this way, I feel this way. They seem to conflict. That's okay though. So it's uncomfortable, yet it's great because I'm in this process and on a day-to-day basis. And, I'm talking about over the course of a few days, not months. I'm really feeling into like, is this who I am? Is this who I want to be? Is this who I am? Is this who I want to be? And playing with the words, playing with which statements, seeing, okay, some are repetitive, some are insufficient. I need to add to them. Some of them have words, but they're not really moving me. So I don't know what Lao Tzu was thinking when he said those words. When I let go of who I am, I become who I might be. I can say this, though, I'm really grateful right now to be engaged in this process. One of my business taglines and life ambitions is make your life a masterpiece, right? And again, going back to Natalie Goldberg, and I'll finish this up, the writing teacher, she talked about shitty first drafts, and she sparked so many people into greater levels of creativity with writing. And yet, what's the most important creativity for any of us? It's our being. It's who we are. So if we can increase our creativity, free ourselves from pressures or perfectionism, get shitty first drafts, and then be able to work with them and play with them, well, that is good as gold. So that's the process I am in at the moment. I'm revising who I am and my manifesto. And I'm curious, do you do this? Have you revised? Do you have one? Are you using it? Do you revise it? What's your process like? What's it feel like? And that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. I love you. Aloha.